pre-pandemic, but post-World War II, the sort of baby boomer generation and younger has not had to face death as a fact. I think it's really largely been optional. And so what happens is patients come into the hospital and they'll come in, especially patients with chronic diseases that have sort of a relapsing, remitting characteristic. And they'll come into the hospital and get tuned up and they'll go home again. And the expectation is that every time I can just get tuned up, where doctors see that these hospitalizations are more and more frequent, going closer and closer together. And for us, that tells us that this person is kind of nearing the end, but in the patient's mind, that's not at all a possibility. And so we find ourselves having created, I would say the medical system is partly to blame, but not entirely to blame, but having created spaces for patients to be made better and not think about their dying. And then this, of course, translates into, the Susan Sontag scenario of giving chemotherapy to the actively dying patient. But because she demands it and insists on it, the doctors comply. And a lot of similar situations, the extended life support, et cetera. And I mean, I first kind of went down this pathway because as a young medical student, bore witness to so many cases like this where everyone would be shaking their heads in the ICU and the nurses would just be so distressed about having to care for patients who were really, actively dying, but their vital functions were being maintained on life support. And it was those sorts of cases that got me thinking, would there be a way to preempt this? Again, as a primary care, preventative medicine doctor, how can we preempt this? How can we put the tools in the patient's hands? Because if your doctor doesn't want to talk to you about death, then how can we empower you to sort of actively learn and learn about these things, engage? How do you talk to your healthcare practitioner? How do you press for answers? How do you discuss prognosis? How do you think about the DNR? And so that was sort of what started me down this whole path. I think we have a long way to go, but to the extent that we can continue to have these conversations with patients and the broader public, I think we'll all be better for it.